There we go. Today's webinar is for NSP grantees to get answers to their NSP questions and solve NSP problems through discussion with the Department of Housing and Urban Development headquarters staff and peers. Topics may include NSP 3 program design, NSP compliance, and any other current issues of interest. This webinar is for NSP 1, 2, and 3 grantees and their partners. So with us today is a bit of a smaller crowd than usual. We've got John Laswick from HUD headquarters in Washington, D.C., and also Walter Howell and from Enterprise Community Partners. And I understand that Philip Bush is also standing by with Walter at Enterprise. So welcome to the three of you.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. And let's see, what do we have here? We may have some hot topics. And this would be your cue, John.
Hot and humid topics from your nation's capital. Or actually, it's pretty nice today. Thanks, Ken, and hello, everyone. We have two reasons for shortening the session today. One is that I'm attending a DRGR training so that I can become more useful to you on DRGR, and it's actually pretty good training, which is going to be coming your way, hands-on in 10 different computer lab settings, so you actually get to do this stuff, which I think has been my problem. The schedule will be out shortly, so look for that. And I think in general we'd like to keep at least the Q&A sessions to 90 minutes, and we realize you've got 25 other things you got to be doing, so we don't want to take too much of your time. As far as the hot topics go, just a couple of points. One is that I would say that the hottest topic here at the 7th floor of HUD in CPD is the NSP2 grantees and the need to ensure that everyone crosses the 50% expenditure line by February 11th of next year. We're down to 4 to 5 months, and so we've ordered a lot of technical assistance, and most of you, many of you are already involved in that, and some of you are getting involved. If you're at all concerned about your program, or even if you just have a sort of specialized question and your overall program is going well, we do encourage you to request technical assistance through the Resource Exchange. As a corollary to that, if you have NSP1 or NSP3 funds, those deadlines are not as pressing, and so I would strongly recommend that you focus on NSP2 until you've got the level of comfort that you're going to make that 50% expenditure deadline. You have more time. You have until March of 2013 on both of the other programs before something happens. So, but if you lose money in NSP2, you'll be frustrated. The next announcement is that we have been talking for too long, and now we will finally be able to issue a policy allowing multifamily properties to be subject to a conditional sales agreement while the environmental review is being done. We came up with a procedure for this for single-family properties, and we've been working on one, and our environmental staff and a number of folks have been very helpful for us in doing that. So we just cleared, I think, what is the last hurdle, and that should be coming out, I would guess, next week. And so what that means is that right now the only thing you can do to tie up a property while you do the environmental review is to negotiate an option, and we understand that options are not all that popular in many markets. So this gives you the ability to sign an agreement that is conditional upon your completing the environmental review, among other things, just as you do on single-family homes. So we think that'll make that a little bit easier, particularly in those markets where the multifamily properties are under competition from different interests. We have, as I mentioned on a previous webinar, been looking at financing training and expanding the range of financing options for those of you who are experiencing problems in getting mortgage money, in particular for takeout loans on your acquisition and rehabs. And we will continue to do that, and we'll be bringing you some products and some training in the next few months. One other thing that I wanted to point out, though, is that we in NSP do not think that lease purchase is the only way to do a rental, and that you could, in fact, have a rental property for 5 years, let's say, until your market starts to turn around, and then decide to sell that property. And I think you'd want to give the tenant the first right of refusal, but lease purchase programs can be kind of complicated, and when credit has been sort of ruined in many places for many individuals, that getting through the lease purchase time period of 3 years to convert from a rental to an ownership may be a little tighter than is realistic. So we are open to allowing a rental unit to go, and it might be a rental unit forever, but at some point, if things change, you could convert it, and that would allow you to get your units occupied and start serving people rather than trying frustratingly with a long time to try to get mortgage money. The next point is that we have over time, but especially lately, as you're all very deep into your programs, received questions that are highly technical, legal, accounting, and those kinds of things. And while we are happy to try to provide technical assistance, sometimes you can't wait that long. And so I just want to remind you that it's perfectly fine to go use some of your admin money and hire a local attorney or a local accountant or somebody who's there and knows your market and knows real estate to answer these kind of questions, because that might be the fastest route to a solution. I personally have been doing this for a long time, and there's plenty of things I cannot help you with. So we will happily provide technical assistance, but it might take a couple of weeks, and if you've got a closing scheduled for Monday, you might want to just go local on that. And then finally, just something to look out for is that we have contracted with TRF, which is a consulting firm that does real estate analysis, pretty sophisticated real estate analysis, and they have been using our NSP production data to look at trends in terms of how units are clustered in the NSP program, and whether clustering results in better performance as measured by home sales prices and vacancy rates. And so this really just starts to finally kind of connect the dots and bring us back to something that's very finite in terms of benefits, which is that it actually is changing your marketplace. We've just gotten a draft of the first quarterly results, but this will become available as a tool for you to go in and look at and to watch the trends over time in different submarkets. We're kind of refining it, but it's really an incredible amount of information, and I'm pretty sure that it'll be available to you in a maps format, so that you can go into your target areas and see which areas have qualified as what they call neighborhood investment clusters, where there are multiple activities, and then see how you're doing. So this is something that the Secretary, I know, is very interested in, and we are too. Some of our measures are, the measure of sort of busyness and not necessarily effectiveness. So I think this is going to be one that'll be quite powerful. So with that, I'll turn it over and let you plug away with your questions, and I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, John. And so questions. It's question time, and I'll remind you again how to ask your questions. Two ways. Verbal is great. You can also ask them in written form, and we've got a couple already. Excuse me. Kristen Arnold asks, In regards to conducting an environmental review, can you clarify if the state and the subrecipient is a nonprofit such as Habitat or a housing authority?
The responsible entity has to be a unit of government. So we found that out in NSP2, where we have some consortia that have no governmental members, and as a result, HUD actually has to do the environmental review on those. Some of the consortia were able, in fact, to team up with either a city or a county or a state to specifically to address that issue. So, in terms of your question, the state would be the responsible entity.
And she's wondering, is it so the state would be the responsible entity for conducting the review? And about reviewing the review?
Well, they sign off on it. That's what it means to be responsible. So there's different ways to accomplish getting the review done. The nonprofit might have some ability to contribute information, and maybe another unit of government that has an interest in it. There are consultants that do this kind of thing. So, but the state is going to be the one that signs on the line. So whatever they choose as a way to get the work done, they have to feel confident that it's done and done correctly, because they'll be the ones that HUD looks to for accountability on that.
Very good. And next up, we've got Cindy, and I'll unmute you, Cindy. Hi, Cindy.
Hello there.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Palm Beach County, Florida.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. About yourself?
Good.
Excellent. My question is in regards to, we received NSP2 funds as a nonprofit subrecipient to develop 25 multifamily units.
Okay.
And in the grant agreement, it does talk about the development bringing up roads to code. And then in our specific grant agreement with the county, it does mention bringing up the roads to county code. And when we went to request funding for that piece, the county wasn't certain if it's an eligible cost under NSP. And their concern is that, is it maintenance or is it part of the construction? The county is requiring us to improve the road from 13 feet to 20 feet and then do an overlay on what was existing.
Okay. So how long of a stretch is that? How much road? How many linear feet?
I have to pull it up.
A lot.
It's not that far.
Okay.
It's not a mile.
Okay, good.
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
100 feet, maybe.
How many?
200.
Okay. Well, so here's the deal. In NSP2 and NSP3, Congress changed the language of what you can be doing under redevelopment, which is where you do your new construction, and it specifically says that public improvements must be related to housing if you do them, whereas in NSP1 you didn't have that necessary linkage to housing. So you could do a park that was maybe in a neighborhood, but it wasn't right next to a bunch of houses you were treating. In this case, and we see this a lot with public improvements, infrastructure, and that sort of thing. You need to run a wire line to your property so that you have service. I would see this requirement being in that same category. Obviously, you're not going to serve some new apartments without water or sewer or without the means of getting in and out of there. So it's okay to use them off-site as long as they're directly related to that housing development. That the housing development is the primary sort of beneficiary of that improvement, and it sounds like a couple hundred feet. There couldn't be too many others. So I think you're okay.
Where we're going, we're really the only place that is being accessed through there.
Right. That's all the better. So I mean, I don't know what their budget looks like.
So we have it in our budget.
Okay.
I guess my next question, because I know the concern here is getting those funds spent, and we're ready to break ground next month.
Right.
How do I get this type of response to the county? They've been for a month kind of trying to find the answer to this. Do you have recommendations?
Tell Ed to just send me a short note and remind me, and I'll send him one back that says it's okay. Ed Lowry?
Okay, yes, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Yeah, get in the ground, please.
We'll do. We're on schedule, so at least that's $4.5 million. 50% of that will be spent.
Good.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah, that's a tricky area. I mean, for one thing, it changed, and the other is like, well, okay, so what do you mean by housing? I mean, this is a pretty good case of a direct connection, and most of the ones that we've seen are pretty direct in this way. Once you start getting into, let's say, recreational things or a small playground, we've allowed those kinds of things where it's essentially surrounded by the housing that you're building or renovating, but in terms of the users. But you just have to be able to make a convincing case that the housing is the primary beneficiary of this public improvement, and it doesn't have to be on-site. It can be off-site.
Good. So, Alejandro, I see your hand up, but I can't unmute you because there's no phone icon next to your name. So if you want to ask your question, please follow these instructions on the screen, and I'll get back to you once you're connected. And then let's go to Mark and Hamilton. Mark Hamilton does not seem to be there, but he did submit it in writing. He said, we have about 20 NSP1 units, I assume, and our rep hasn't been in favor of us renting the houses. In those estates, we can rent the houses. Is there any advice you can share with us?
Well, every market's different, so I'm not sure where you're writing from, and I don't want to say, I'm trying to, sort of pick sides. But I mean, I think what we want you to do is what makes sense from a market standpoint. So, if you've got a market that's drowning in rental units, maybe that's good advice. If you still can't sell them as ownership units, then you really have a problem. But I think that if it's a scenario where your rental market is relatively tight and you think that you can rent them, I mean, most affordable housing is snatched up pretty quickly when it's new or newly renovated, and so I'm not sure why the rep is saying that. If you'd like, we can get in a conversation with you about that, or you could ask your rep to touch base with the headquarters staff and go over their concerns. They know these communities better than we do, and so I don't want to try to answer over the phone and say, well, somebody's right or somebody's wrong, but there is a right way to go forward, and I think it's to follow the flow of what the market's doing right now. So if you think that's the case and you're still meeting resistance, then ask your rep to check with me, and we can talk it over.
Very good. Thanks for that question, Mark. And going to go back to Alejandro now. Hello.
All right. Hopefully this works. Hi, this is Alejandro Lara. I'm with New Economics Women in Los Angeles, California.
Hey, Alejandro. How are you?
Hey, John. Good to hear from you again. I had a question with respect to encumbrance. Right now, we are providing second financing to buyers, and sometimes we're including in there the closing costs. And when we do that, we basically, for example, if the value of the closing cost, say, goes beyond 100%, what we tend to do is leave a development subsidy on the table, so we don't really encumber the property with the closing cost. let's say we change that policy and say the closing cost is $2,500 on a $100,000 house. That 2.5% would basically exceed the loan of value by 2.5%. We were wondering if there's a rule against that, or can we do that?
That's a good question. We've been wrestling with that. I don't know if it was in your case, but I've heard this debate and I've been kicking it around. I mean, the sort of principle here is that you can't really sell a property for more than it's worth. So, I would say in general, if you start, what you're doing sounds like the right way to approach this, and hopefully the closing costs aren't such a large amount that you can't afford to eat a little bit, when you're doing that. But, I'm not 100% sure in my own mind whether, the closing costs are really development costs, which you can include. You can't charge more than total development costs. I don't think they are development costs, which would mean that you should keep doing what you're doing. What we don't want to do is have a scenario where somebody's getting into essentially a negative equity situation, as they sign their closing documents, even if it's for a couple $1,000. So, so I think in terms of the principles of the program and trying to put people into a sustainable, affordable housing situation that, pushing the limits to get a couple extra thousand just doesn't seem like a high percentage move to me. But we need to come up with a policy on that, and we will. Just giving you my personal sort of. This is the way we've been interpreting it, and I think it makes sense. We've had to talk some of these things over with our colleagues in the HUD program, and so we're trying to come up with something that would be clear on that. But I would suggest that you keep doing it the way you're doing it, and if you have a compelling reason to change that, please write that into us or talk to Steve Callahan, and we'll take a closer look at it.
So just a quick follow-up there, John. So there is no hard and fast rule in terms of encumbering a property beyond 100%?
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, you can't sell it for more than it's worth, and you can't sell it for more than total development cost, whichever is lower. So that's why it gets into, are closing costs really part of development costs? I don't believe they are. I mean, that's a buyer responsibility typically. So, it's not. It doesn't really have anything to do with developing the house. Our rule is that you can't sell it for more than it's worth or more than total development cost, and if those two numbers are different, you can't sell it for more than the lower of them. So if you've got a unit that you put, in your case, $500,000 into, and just Los Angeles,
not there yet.
Well, it's Los Angeles real estate joke, yeah. But let's say you got $100,000 and you want to put. And it appraises at $100,000, but make it simple, and then you want to add on another $2,000 or $3,000 in closing costs. I mean, normally people pay those, but it does come out of the closing. I mean, it's all part of the same number that you pay when you're signing. So this is a good example of one of those questions that HUD doesn't know all the answers to. So. We're researching this, and we will make a statement on it because you're not the only one that's asked about it. But I think it's safer in the meantime to stay under 100% of development cost of value.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alejandro. And now we'll go to Deborah Johnson. Hey, Deborah.
Hi, it's Deborah Johnson from Maine, and actually that conversation just changed my question, so I'll start with the follow-up to that. And that is that we're using the closing costs per the discussions on previous webinars in person, that the house is, bought, rehabbed, and then sold for market value to an income-eligible person who's getting their own financing. They don't need any down payment assistance. They're coming in, they're buying the house, and then we're just providing them the closing costs as the cash to borrower and doing up the recapture provision and using that as a recording that as a lien on the property in terms of recapture.
Yeah, I think what Alejandro was asking is he wants to go over the price. So if you're going under the price,
we're actually going over too, because by the time let's say somebody did a VA loan, and then we're going in and giving them $4,000 in closing costs. Paying it, and that's the cash to borrow, which then gives you your recapture required period of affordability, which is 5 years, and recording that so that if they should sell the house within 5 years, they have to pay that back. That sometimes could put you over the 100% loan to value. But if the lender's okay with it, how else would you get the required period of affordability enforced if you don't do that?
Well, what you don't get is the recapture, because anything over total development cost.
This is way under total development cost.
Okay, so.
But it's a 100% loan to value issue. Is that we might have $200,000 of investment, but we're selling it for $100 because that's what it's worth.
Right. Okay. So even more so. So when you go over fair market value, anything over fair market value is a development subsidy, which means that you either have to calculate the repayment based on the entire amount that you put into it, or you do what you're doing, which is to give them a small amount of direct subsidy, which is below market value, and that enables you to be in the area to have something to recapture, and therefore you can impose a recapture requirement. And in this case, where they're getting a very limited subsidy, that makes a lot of sense, and that approach is okay. But the problem is, as soon as you cross over the line into above fair market value, any of that is development subsidy, and you don't recapture, you don't get any of that back. And further, by being in the resale mode, every dollar of NSP that went through there, even though it's not staying in the property, becomes a dollar that's used as a basis for the period of recapture. So you might end up with a 15-year recapture period on a house that somebody got a $2,000 subsidy, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So you do what you're doing, which is
wait. Now I'm confused. It was pretty much that was the suggested way to go.
Yeah, you're okay.
We've purchased and rehab, say, and the total cost of purchase and rehab is $200,000. Right. But when you go to sell the property, and this person we're not doing resale, we're doing strictly cash direct subsidy in the form of closing cost assistance.
Right. Well, let's take one step in between there, though, because before you get to the closing costs, you got $200,000 in a $100,000 unit, right? So you've got a $100,000 development subsidy
that we can't recapture and have no intention of.
No, right. And therefore, you go to the second step, which is to create a recapturable amount of, in this case, closing costs, which is okay. What Alejandro was asking is, can he encumber the amount above fair market value? And the answer is no. Our little issue is that just by putting a little lien on the property in the form of a $3,000 or $4,000
closing cost just for 5 years, is that it could, not in all cases, but in the case of like the VA, which they had no problem with, for a split second in time, they may be over 100% loan to value because they can finance 100% VA.
You just don't want them carrying that.
Right. Well, hopefully in our world that and again, home builds in the ability that should you have to write it off or whatever. But our theory is that within a very short period of time, the first few mortgage payments and the first year goes by, they'll be under the 100% loan to value even with the recapture.
Well, if you're not in Florida.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so, well, but I mean...
We're okay with the cash, with the...
Because it seemed to me that people were, we were working people into a corner with this, you put all this money in and then you don't leave any in per se, you don't, you're leaving money in, but you're not leaving money in under fair market value, so she said a lot of people do this and that's okay. And like I said, in this case, they're receiving an improved house, but they're not getting something that's above, they're not getting a subsidy below market value, therefore...
No.
It's okay to create a little bit of a subsidy below market value and have a repayment period that really matches the benefit a little bit better too.
Really. So, shall I wait and put my hand up again, or shall I ask my real question?
Your real? Okay, that was your fake question. Okay.
That was the follow-up because you piqued my interest when you started talking about.
I'm kidding you. Go ahead.
100%. Yeah. Anyway, the other issue is obligations and the integrity of your obligations for NSP1. We had a couple fairly large projects, and between the time of going for the initial obligation and permitting and plans and all of that, there's an opportunity they've expended some of the money. There's an opportunity through our state housing authority to go in and apply for a round of funding that will give them project-based vouchers. And so what we do is de-obligate a portion of the funds that were slated to go to this. This is a 25% set aside,
okay,
and re-obligate them to another 25% set aside project. In essence, we're going to end up getting more 50% units than we would have, but I will be de-obligating and re-obligating in another project.
That's okay. We don't want you to, be doing this wholesale, but I think strategically it sounds like it makes sense. And plenty of projects that were legitimately obligated by last September, fell out for various reasons. The developers couldn't proceed, or the financing didn't come through. They couldn't get the tax credits, whatever. So now you're up against an expenditure deadline of 2013, and we're not as concerned that there's going to be some shifting because we recognize that's going to happen.
Right.
We don't have a continuing interest, I guess you could say, in the obligations. Unless you would de-obligate your whole program.
Oh, no. This is strategically a good thing to do. It's in essence getting some extra project-based vouchers and projects that were already going to be 100% NSP, and it looks like a good thing to do.
No, it sounds good, and there's also, EGADs of scenarios where, somebody was going to do an acquisition, rehab, resale, and they realize they can't sell anything in their market, and now they want to do rental, and that's a different can of worms, and they're shifting some funds around. So, we just want to make sure you can actually spend it by the deadline.
Right.
But the fact that it's not exactly the same projects that you had listed as obligated last September is not something that we're concerned about.
Okay. They'll be the same. They'll just be additional, so that would be a good thing then.
Well, you guys just do such a good job of it, can I say?
Well, we're small. So the expenditure deadline is March, and any other highlights on what happens with, admin money? We hit that 2013 expenditure date, and are we going to be able to carry admin dollars forward to deal with the program income and all of that after the fact?
Well,
influence on that?
You can allocate 10% of program income to admin now, and we anticipate that program income is going to keep rolling in at some rate for most grantees for a while at least. I talked to a guy in Utah who thinks it's going to be coming in for 20 years, which might be possible.
So what about the admin funds from the original allocation?
Well, again, you have to be fully expended by March of 2013. So what that means is that you've got you'll probably end up having some funds left in your original letter of credit because you've been using program income first, as you're supposed to. those funds are essentially program income. They represent the amount of program income that you haven't spent, and you can allocate and budget for projects out of that, including program administration. We are starting to put together a closeout notice, and there are a number of questions about what the proper use of program income is after closeout. When can you close out? Because we've been saying that you really can't close out until you've got occupants in all your buildings, and so that's not going to happen by March. We recognize that could be 12 or more months later. So, I think closeouts are going to be a little confusing for a while until we see, sort of how that works out. I mean, if we take it really strictly, we may never close out, and we don't want to do that. Fortunately, you're an entitlement community. The issue becomes a little dicier where we've got, all nonprofits that aren't in a regular relationship with the CDBG program. So I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout way is we don't know a lot of these answers yet, but I think that you are entitled to 10%. Admin, you are entitled to use your program income, even though it's not sitting there looking like program income. It is program income, and so I don't see any reason that we would want to change that. So,
okay. Thank you.
We know you're going to have costs beyond this. I mean, you're going to have 15-year affordability periods that somebody has to monitor. Even our program income isn't probably going to cover all that. So just sit tight, and maybe we'll have it for you in a couple of months.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. And if I could remind those who've already been called on, if you could click your lower hand button, that would be helpful to me. And next we've got a question from Roxanne, and she says, although we currently consistently use it for eligible costs.
Actually, I made a misstatement a couple of webinars ago that you can keep interest on program income. That's also program income. So I don't think you have a problem there. If you look at 504, 570-504 in the CDBG regs or in the guidance that we recently put out on program income, Section 500 defines it, and one of the definitions is let's see, interest earned on program income pending its disposition. So that is also considered program income. It's like program income squared, I guess you might say. So you're fine.
Very good. And next up is Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Kent. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, and where are you calling from?
I'm from North Little Rock.
Oh, that Melissa. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that one.
Very good. Hi. What's your question?
I had two, actually. The first is if a subrecipient receives an insurance payment for storm damage on a property that they're in the middle of rehab on, in this case a tree fell on the property during a storm. So if they receive insurance money, would that be considered program income and need to be entered as such?
I don't think so. So we might need to track that down for you. There's I don't have my OMB circulated. OMB has a term for let's see, for these kinds of things that are basically refunds and that kind of stuff. You take some lumber back and you get your money back. I mean, in effect, it was program income, but it's not. It isn't actually program income because the program didn't generate it. I mean,
Well, that was the question. We had a couple of those refunds that you mentioned, and we've just been actually deducting them off of the jar, but not keying it into DRGR as program income because we didn't feel like you say it generated it. But with the insurance, since the policy was paid for with NSP funds, that's what raised the question, I guess, was then with the proceeds need to come back in.
I'll follow up. I don't think so, but I'm not 100% positive, so I'll check on it and get back to you.
Okay. And then a second quick question. Is there a list somewhere of items that should not be included in total development costs? I know property maintenance, like mowing the lawn and utility bills, I think have been mentioned in the past. Right. But I guess specifically like insurance payments, tax payments during the time that...
so during the period of construction or rehab, those are customarily development costs. Beyond that, they aren't. We don't have I guess we don't have a list of everything that's not a development cost, but we do have a list of everything that we can think of that was a development cost, and it's in a policy alert that came out in January called Accounting for Development Costs. And it's got a big long list of things that are that fall into the development cost category and somewhat split out by hard and soft costs, indicated by italics, just to show people that development costs include both. But we said pretty regularly. I know there's some FAQs on this that any of the even taxes during the period of construction are ineligible development costs.
They are eligible?
They are, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
You look up that memo, you look at that policy alert. If that doesn't answer your question, let us know.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thanks, Melissa. And let's see. Adrian,
Hi. Hello?
Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
Hello.
I am calling from the Metro Development and Housing Agency in Nashville, and we have NSP1 and NSP2, and I have a question about NSP2. We have a developer who has an option on a property that they found out during the due diligence process has liens on it and legal issues. I think there's an estate on it that was not found out until after they were in the due costs that they put into it with the environmental assessments and option payments and that kind of thing. Being that they feel like they would be able to purchase their piece of the property, but the problem is it's part of a whole redevelopment deal, and they're afraid that they won't have that same market if the other portion of the property is tied up in a legal battle.
Well, we call these failed development costs or failed activity delivery costs, and as long as they're reasonable in amount, they are actually project costs of projects that don't proceed to completion for whatever legitimate reason. And so, legal issues, title problems, this kind of thing are legitimate issues. You can't always know those things. So, yes, they can charge these if you think as the lead member that the costs are reasonable, and you can charge them to, what we've been saying is you could charge them to the project, the activity line item rather than to general administration, because they are development costs. You just don't have a development. There's been some discussion here about whether we're looking at that in the right way, but that's what we've said. By the same token, I mean, you could get appraisal on a property that is out of your reach, or you could find something in the title, or you could counsel somebody for homeownership counseling that can't do it because they don't have the financial means. These are actually good things in the sense that, you know, you'd probably be in trouble if you proceeded with them. So finding them out in time to get out of them is a good thing, and we don't want to penalize people by making them eat the costs of that knowledge.
Right, and their follow-up question to that is, if they're able, they still have the option, and they've not extended it or either talked back to the owner after they found out these issues, but they wanted to know if they were able to purchase the property and then sell it and use the proceeds from that on another NSP2 eligible activity, if that's okay. And my concern was the fact that they are developers, so I'm not sure how we could be sure that the proceeds from that sale would actually go to an NSP2 eligible activity.
Right. I agree with you. And I mean, it's just something you're going through an extra step that has a fair amount of risk in it and saying, well, we use that on something else. I mean, why just use the NSP money that they haven't spent on it yet for that next property? The other problem is that now you're getting into the territory where you're spending money on something that can't meet a national objective, because just buying real estate doesn't meet a national objective. You either have to tear down a house and that benefit the neighborhood, or you have to house people, and that activity doesn't do any of that. So, you know, you could say it's ineligible. So I would definitely stay away from that.
Okay. I have another question, if it's okay.
Now, this is just 50 cents.
We also, part of the NSP2, we have a shared equity program, and finding it a little bit difficult to find buyers. I mean, I guess it's not just a shared equity issue, but it's just in general. And one of our developers, they have some acquisition rehab homes that they feel like could probably work under that shared equity program. We've already, I guess, extended funds on the acquisition and the rehab, and their question is, can those units be transferred to shared equity?
Transferred from what?
From the acquisition rehab activity.
But you're still gonna sell them, right, as acquisition rehab?
They were actually going to be rental.
Oh, I see. Well, it depends on what your action plan says, but is this NSP 1 or 2?
2.
I mean, do you have both rental and ownership components in your approved plan?
We have the only home ownership would be the shared equity.
All right. Okay. So, how many of these are we talking about? A lot?
No more than 5.
Yeah, I don't know. These calls are a little hard to make over the phone. You know, NSP2 is quite a bit tighter than NSP 1 or 3 in terms of amendments, and so I don't want to give you, bad advice.
Should I write it in?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think it's probably okay, but what you need to tell us when you write in is, well, here's what my activities are in the budget, and basically the effect of these. I mean, we don't usually have problems switching, from one direction to another a little bit. It's not usually considered substantial enough to be an amendment. And so, I think you're probably okay, but I'd rather have somebody take a close look at it just to make sure, because I don't want to, get you in trouble. I mean, worst case, you have to do an amendment, but and we've been moving those pretty quickly. But if you don't have to, we don't want to put you through that either.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Adrian. And okay, so we've got Karen, and then Mark, and then Brian. So let's first go to Karen. Hi, Karen, are you there?
Hi. I didn't really have a question. I was just making a comment on the concern about being able to secure the period of affordability on the property where the home buyer is obtaining a VA mortgage.
Oh, yeah?
So my comment was just that they do not have to take out a 100% VA loan, even though that's an option. just reduce that first mortgage, and then the financing gap, whether it's 2% or more, you can make that your second mortgage and then secure that for the period of affordability.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and I think that may be what Maine's doing. I'm not exactly sure, but is that what you're doing? Do you do it that way? Okay, well, it sounds like you're on the right path. So, thanks for the advice.
You bet. Bye.
Bye. Okay. And next up is Mark.
Okay, that's okay. And it's time for lunch.
Okay, let me find Karen again. There we go. Mark, are you there?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that the first question I had was, we have a lot of first-time home buyers that don't exactly have $2,000 available, but since all of our homes are selling for under $100,000, even the 3%, if they were to split the 6% closing costs, would be under $3,000. Do we have to make sure they put down the $3,000 as outlined in our home buyer cost?
I think as Karen was just pointing out, and I think other mortgage vehicles can do this too, your total of your direct subsidy to them and the mortgage should not exceed fair market value. So,
right.
I mean, you know, just because it's only $3,000, it's still $3,000 that potentially, you know, it exceeds the value of the property, and therefore, you know, I mean, you know, one of the ways we got here was negative equity. You know, we don't want to start people off on that, particularly ones with, you know, sort of who can barely make the down payment. So.
Right. And that's what my question is how strict is HUD basically, and it's basically, let's say that the person only has $2,000 in their account, they qualify for the program, they have no real income, they're making, you know, nothing really for income, but yet they qualify for all of our parameters except for that one. How strict is HUD going to come down on us for not enforcing that $3,000? If they have nothing in savings other than, say, a couple thousand.
Well, I mean, we're not requiring that you have down payments. I mean, if you have FHA, you're required to have at least if you're making down payment assistance, you only can pay half of that.
Right.
But I mean, you know, if you're looking at FHA, for example, I mean that's 1.75%. So you got to ask yourself, well, if this person can't afford 1.75%, how capable of withstanding, you know, the need for a new furnace are they? Or, you know, I mean, we're not doing people a favor to put them into housing units that they can just barely afford. I mean, that's, I guess that's not official policy, but I mean, I think that most of us, you know, want to avoid that. So, you know, we don't have you know, as far as NSP goes, we don't have the same kind of restrictions except for the, you know, the down payment assistance. You know, there's other ways to put money into these projects, and and so, you know, if you don't say you're doing down payment assistance, then you can theoretically, you know, get them in there for no money down. But I would just say I doubt that's a good thing to do.
No, and we haven't done the 1% without him, you know, without him, because that is one of the problems we have to make sure to do is say that 1%. But we're kind of thinking that when the house only sells for $75,000, and you look at the 3%, that's not going to be more than $3,000. So less than $3,000. That's what we're going to do. That's when you start getting into is because the homes are selling for substantially less. When you do the 3%, you actually are making them now pay more than generally 2% of the market value. So that's where, because when you do the 3%, it is definitely less than the $3,000. The 3% is.
Well, so I'm not sure where you're getting the $3,000. I didn't.
Oh, in the home buyer cost under our NSP home buyer assistance program guidelines. It's on like page 7 of 44 under homebuyer cost. Section 1 says down payment. Minimum requirement. Minimum requirement is 3% of the down payment, which they usually make, or actually 50% of down payment, to 3% of the purchase price, or $3,000, whichever is greater.
Well, I don't believe that's one of our rules. So
okay.
So you may have that, written into yours, or you may have adapted one of the toolkits that we put together, but HUD doesn't have a $3,000 number, so as far as we're concerned, you're not bound by that.
Okay. That's what I'm sure, because when it was a 3%, it also was much less than 3,000, and we're just kind of sure that we weren't going to have something down as we're saying if they put down, let's say, $2,700, well, they're off by $300, now you have to find $300 of your general fund money to cover that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you may want to look at those, but if those are grantee driven terms, you may say, hey, well, this number might have made sense 2 years ago and doesn't make sense anymore. We can change it.
Okay, and that's one of the is its own. What do we need to do to change our language, or does it kind of feel like almost like silent things where you're allowed to not really enforce it?
Your language on what?
On the home buyer.
You don't have to come to us for, so you can change those, you should. I mean, if market conditions are changing or people's incomes are, getting worse or whatever it is, then you need to stay current with the conditions. So the kind of things you're talking about, and you might want to go back and look at who wrote those, but they could be based on some material that we put out, but even if they are, most of those things are, the point that you're talking about is not a HUD requirement. So if you have a technical assistance provider, or if you have somebody that's worked with this, figure out which is which, and then you can change your own stuff. The only thing that we really say in that, as far as down payments, is that if you're calling it down payment assistance, it can't be more than 50% of it. But like I said, you could call it, financing, or just the outright, subsidy, and you're not subject to any limit. So.
Okay, yeah. We definitely do fund 50% of the escrow closing costs for the buyers.
Okay.
And so basically, in our community, it's 6% of the escrow costs, and so we basically do cover the 3%, and the buyer's responsible for the other 3%.
Yeah,
that's how we usually do it, and that's basically where we got that 3% from is from our community. So, okay.
Right. Well, you might have got the 3,000 for when average values were $100,000 and now they're 75. So.
Well, that's probably why something we paid over $100,000 for. Now we can't sell them for more than this. We're taking losses on all of them, like we're supposed to. But we're trying to find a way to make our buyers. We're trying to unload all of our homes, and
sure.
And the only way we can unload the homes is if we, by going to the guidelines, is to allow them to put down less than $3,000, and so we didn't want to deplete all of our buyers' savings accounts, to nothing.
No, I agree with you.
So well, thank you, though.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you, Mark. And we've got next Brian, then Jesse, and then Lisa. So first there is Brian. Hi, Brian.
Hi, how are you? I've got two questions for you here. I don't know if I can do
and
both.
Could you speak up just a little bit?
Yes, I've got two questions. The first question has to do with mom and dad and whether or not they can co-sign for their daughter and son-in-law, and if so, what would be the best way to structure that in terms of who's on the title and the first and second mortgage. So it really has to do with the income qualification, and I've looked through the technical guide and didn't really see any specific guidance on that.
Well, so co-signing I don't think is a problem, but if the kids are dependents, then potentially you got to include the parents' income. I'm assuming that the kids are grown and on their own.
essentially college students who are just out working part-time students and trying to acquire a house, but I believe they don't have a whole lot of income.
Are parents still claiming them as dependents?
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's the bigger issue. I don't know off the top of my head about co-signing, but to me that's less of a concern because it's not, the co-signers are not benefiting from the, living in the house or anything like that. They're just backstopping the financing. So, but the guide doesn't have anything in that, the big purple book or whatever.
No, well, I looked at the PDF online, so I'm not sure if we're talking about the same one. But
the income verification.
No, I didn't see anything specifically on whether you count both incomes. I've gotten some guidance from other community development corporations in the area that it should be okay, but I think there have been some questions about what are the best way to structure that so that you don't count the parents as far as the income is concerned. But I mean, frankly, they're not going to live there. They're not going to be on the title. They're just going to help them get that first loan.
All right. Well, Jesse just showed me a moldering 1990 policy memo that specifically addresses the dependence thing. And as long as they're not dependents, then the parent's income doesn't count. But so you just have to verify that. I can't guess on the co-signing, but it seems to me that it shouldn't be a problem. If you want to write it into the ask a question, we can pin that down a little better for you.
Okay, I will do that. And then the last question I have is related to NSP1, and we have what is a dilapidated, blighted commercial building. And what we're planning to do is do exterior improvements to it and bring it up to code. Basically, it's going to be white boxed, not finished out or anything. And the question is about what would be the best eligible uses for that, whether it's kind of mixed use or we've heard that it needs to be neighborhood serving. But what are the best ways to get some specific guidance on what's eligible for that? And your memos and
well, again, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm pushing it back, but I mean, it depends on what the situation is there. I mean, if it's got some marketability as commercial space or something, that would be good. I mean, think about so there's the two things we always ask ourselves first are what's the eligible use, and in this case it's redevelopment, and you can do in NSP1 you can do this kind of redevelopment for non-housing projects, so that's okay. And that, I mean, as far as NSP goes, and then the other part is what's the national objective, and this is where I think you start asking and answering questions about what you can do with it, because a lot of what you need to worry about here is, a classic kind of thing to do in a neighborhood, in a commercial building that could serve a neighborhood would be, local service businesses, cafes, beauty shops, that sort of thing that benefit a residential area that's primarily low, moderate, and middle income. You don't have the jobs, NSP doesn't have the jobs criterion that you have in CDBG for meeting a national objective. So you couldn't, say, put in a small manufacturing facility or some kind of dry cleaner business or whatever that employed people, because we can't count that. So you're kind of really limited, I think, in most cases to some sort of a neighborhood benefit on this, and that's not to say you couldn't do some office uses, accountants, lawyers, insurance people, those are all basically, sort of retail services at some level. They have a different type of space, but it's the same customers. And we've seen mixed use, although I don't know if you're building works for that, but you might have residential, in some of our cases, you can get some residential above, and then have commercial below. I don't know what the configuration of your building is. How many square feet is it?
It's about 2,000 square feet on the first floor and 2,000 on the second.
So you got a two-story, well.
Yeah, realistically, it could be a mixed-use residential above, commercial below. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's not a ton of commercial. So you got maybe 2 or 3 little shops that you can put in there. That wouldn't be, the end of the world in terms of finding tenants. I don't know what your market's like, and is this someplace that is really going to serve your target area?
Yeah, it's certainly in the neighborhood where we have targeted most of our other NSP dollars as well. So it certainly meets the criteria. I think the question that we're running into before we start construction is, how are we going to market this? Especially our realtor is asking that question because
it might be worth doing some sort of a feasibility analysis to look at some of these questions. Have a real estate professional look and say, well, we think that it could, these types of businesses would work here, and these won't work here, and then you need to overlay or give them before they start. Give them your list of, hey, it can't be a jobs thing. It's got to be retail / consumer services or housing, and see what they say. But without knowing the area, I mean, I think a couple of local service types of businesses and a couple of apartments or something upstairs would make sense. Whether you can get the retail tenants, that's a tough question in all across America these days. So.
Right. And are there income qualifications that would go along with the residential component of it?
Yes, they'd have to meet the LNMI. Okay. But I mean, that's a pretty big range, up to 120%. So if you've got your 25% set aside accounted for, that's fine. Then you could go a little higher. I mean, it could be condos, I suppose. I don't know how that would work with rental stuff downstairs, but.
Okay.
But that sounds like it. I mean, I think the biggest risk is really just finding somebody that can make a go of it in a location like that. I mean,
is there additional policy guidance on this particular subject? There may be some frequently asked questions. You could probably go in and look under. I don't know what would be probably redevelopment. I don't believe we've written anything. We haven't had that many of these scenarios. We've answered a lot of questions like yours. I don't know if any of them has ever really panned out into a development or not, frankly. Well, we're looking to.
But if you get like halfway through it and you're stuck, write in and ask us.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Kent? Are you there, Kent?
There you go. Sorry about that. Jesse had submitted a couple of comments in regards to previous questions. So, Jesse, are you there?
I am.
Hi.
Did you unmute me?
Yeah, I did. We can hear you.
That's pretty cool. I wanted to address the expenditure deadline question because from what we can see, there are a lot of grantees, probably more than half of the grantees in NSP 1 and 2 at least, look like they're going to meet the expenditure deadline and still have funds left to draw in their line of credit. So far as we know, if you meet the deadline, you will be able to draw admin funds or whatever. If you fail to meet the deadline, that's what we're having to address in our notice that's going to cover closeouts and recaptures and the things that happen at the end at the expenditure deadline, which we just haven't gotten out there yet with. So I especially wanted to sort of let people know that the closeout occurs on anything on the CDBG chassis when you meet a national objective. So it's not just program income that keeps coming in and interrupting things, because there are ways to close out around a stream of program income. But if you have projects from your original grant amount that haven't met a national objective yet, we can't close out according to the regulations. We'll probably be using mostly the entitlement regulations for grant closeouts because program income is really muddying the waters. John, you sent me that number. How much program income has already been received for NSP 1?
$312 million.
As of this week. So
yeah.
The program's going to be bigger on the outside than on the inside.
Probably, yeah.
So that was the one thing I wanted to dive in on. I don't think there was anything else. I'm uncertain on pretty much the same things John's uncertain on.
That's a relief.
Yeah.
The worst option is I'm certain he's wrong.
No, well, I only do that when I'm really having a bad day.
Okay, good.
Today's not so bad. Okay, so I can go back to sitting in the corner.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
Hover away. We appreciate it. We're not even in the same. We're in the same building, but hey, this is HUD, of course.
Different spots. So Lisa, you're up now. Hi, Lisa.
Hello there.
Lisa Evans. Hi.
Actually, don't mean to beat the direct buyer assistance and appraised value to death here, but in a previous call we had talked about this and we had asked this question related to total development cost, appraised value, and direct buyer assistance, and had certainly come to believe that because it was direct buyer assistance, it could in fact, as a second mortgage, go beyond the appraised value. Because back to the example that someone cited of $200,000 development, $100,000 appraised value, and your mortgage amount, you offer someone $5,000 in closing cost assistance. You then have secured liens of $105,000, which is over the appraised value, but that $5,000 is direct buyer assistance. And that's what we've done.
Well, clearly we need to straighten that out. My understanding of the home recapture and the home affordability rules is that anything above market value is a development subsidy, and anything below it is a direct subsidy. And what you're saying is that you've got a direct subsidy that's above market value, which
yes,
doesn't compute for me. So I could be wrong. I'm frequently wrong, but let me. We need to flesh this out. I need to go beg Ginny to give me.
Yeah, because otherwise we're re-recording, and we can figure out ways. And basically, then what it becomes is a seller's concession.
Yeah.
If you're offering home buyer assistance in the way of closing costs, and then I guess the question would be is it viewed then as paying down payment or closing costs because we're in the midst of a HUD audit and being determined of which one is it really?
Well,
because if we ante up $3,000 and the buyer puts up $3,000, which one did we really cover?
Yeah.
And it was real clean when we could show that the buyer put in X and then we went above that.
On the closing costs?
Yeah. If the buyer put in down payment, we could show that the required down payment on the house represented 3% and the buyer put in 3%.
Right.
But if we're both putting in 3, did we pay the closing or the down payment?
Yeah, I hate to say, I think a lot of this is semantic, if you read the law, and it's not in the regs the way they are now, but it's in our guidance, that home ownership assistance covers a lot of stuff, and the only one with a limitation on it is the 50% on the homeowner.
On the down payment.
Payment assistance, and that's straight out of the law, and that's one of the reasons it's not in the regs right now, because it keeps coming in and out. But everything else is there's nothing. There doesn't talk about limits. So that's why I say. I would kind of stay away from calling anything down payment assistance.
Right, we are, but if we're providing closing costs and it's above the market value, which is what we have recorded? Do we need to go back and only take it to what would be taken up to the appraised value?
I think so, but I'm not confident right at this point. So what do you have below market value? I mean, is there additional second mortgage down there under fair market value, or
the only thing that takes it below the fair market value is their down payment? I mean, so the first mortgage amount is generally 3% below the value.
Right, but
they're paying 3% down, and then we're covering closing costs.
You're not providing that, so you really are you're all above market value, except for whatever down payment they come up with, which
yes.
So maybe if this turns out not to match up with what you're doing, you might be able to call the other money closing costs, and I don't know. We'll figure it out. I mean, we're not going to send you to prison over it, but I'm sure it's a pain. So,
well, the other issue is, of course, we're marketing these that we're providing. We're offering X amount in closing cost assistance, but in fact, then that becomes that doesn't become a marketing tool. Rather, we would just simply provide seller concessions equal to that. So then we're further dropping the sales price, which would then further decline that market.
Right. Yeah, I know. Well, I understand that argument as well, and we've gotten it in a number of places. The problem is we still got to look at what's happening to the family there, and
right.
And I think as far as marketing, you can still kind of call it what people recognize. I don't think that's disingenuous, but
it would depress the sales price, which we're already, of course, but.
Right, but I think you could still call it closing costs, but in reality, and you can do closing costs, and there aren't any limits to the closing costs either, as far as.
But only if we get an appraisal above the sales price. Because we can go to the appraised value.
Right. Well, Craig Nickerson has brought up an interesting point about appraisals, and getting the appraisers to realize that the work that's going on here is, these aren't really comparables in the true sense of comparable. I don't know how we approach this with the appraisals, but honestly, I don't know how much we're really driving the market anyway. So I'd like to think that we are, but I don't think the first couple really drive the market at least. So I don't think we're shooting ourselves in the foot that much, but that's just my personal guess. So, but the bigger question needs to be answered, and we'll try to answer it quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Lisa. And let's see, Shelley. You're up. Get you unmuted there. Hi.
Great. My question was, can a nonprofit chartered by Neighborhood Works be considered a developer, and can they receive a developer fee? Just because we've had all the issues with housing authorities, I wanted to make sure that there's nothing out there that may tie them to something like that.
Here's the issue, which is that the rehab portion of the CDBG regs at 201B2, I think it is, says that developers, and it doesn't even call them developers, but that you can provide assistance to private, for-profit, or non-profit individuals and organizations. So that would cover everything from grandmas to NeighborWorks affiliates. And but it doesn't say public nonprofits, and that's where we get into all this frustration over housing and redevelopment authorities. So an organization like that, as long as they're not a member of a consortium, and you don't have a consortium grant, so you should be fine.
Okay.
We have plenty of nonprofits and NeighborWorks and other affiliates out there that are acting as developers, and they're okay.
Okay, perfect. And then my second question was, we're thinking about utilizing your TA, and how long, I guess, does that take after we submit to have them contact us to start working on that? I mean, are we looking at 2 weeks? Are we looking more at a month? I was just trying to get an idea.
Well, we have two sort of levels of it, and one is a kind of limited, generally off-site type of thing. So I don't know what you want. That happens very quickly, within a week or two. If you need somebody to come out and spend a little more time there and work through some thorny issues with you, yeah, I think it takes us. We have to assign it to a technical assistance provider to do an assessment, and they can start doing some work right away. So but I would still say probably a month plus by the time you really get going on it. It sort of depends though. I mean, I don't think you guys have major problems. So we have communities, grantees that are. We really got to get in there and sort of start from the ground up. I don't think you're in that situation, so...
No, we're not. It was just something new that we were thinking about needing. We wanted to get some technical assistance adding to our program, so I was just kind of getting an idea. So that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Shelley. So we'll go to Gail, Rebecca, and Patricia in just a minute, but first... I want to show you what's coming up here. A bunch of webinars are recently added to the schedule and going all the way into November now. So you can find more information about these out on the NSP Resource Exchange in the Learning Center, and then click Webinars. Gail Brownlee, been very patient. Hi, Gail.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to be in the middle of a board meeting at the program income webinar that is coming up, so I thought I might try to get a question answered today. When we did our NSP1 programs, we went out, and unfortunately we didn't have much of a nonprofit base in our state, so we actually are the ones that went out and purchased the properties and turned around and rehabilitated them. And once we got them done, we're actually selling them to first-time home buyers, and then using the same money that was used to rehabilitate them, holding the mortgages. And of course, when they're making their payments, that's going to come back in as program income. My question is do I have to go out and post in DRGR each and every monthly payment that I receive to the appropriate address? Or is there any way we can post the entire monthly payments that we get in that month in bulk somehow?
I think there is. Either you could do it, more like quarterly for the individual ones, or if they're really small, possibly even annually, or as in bulk. Maybe Jesse can get on and help me out here. You don't have to do it every month.
And I don't even like doing it every month if I can just do it instead of all of the loans I have and posting it to each individual address. Is there a way to put it in the bucket for that particular type of program? Because then I have all of the backup in my servicing department of what every penny that went to.
You're a little out of my range on this one, so unless Jesse knows.
Hi, I got it.
Okay.
I can do this one. Are you talking about single family?
Yes, I sure am.
The notices, all the notices for NSP specifically say you can pool single family. Did you create a separate activity for every single address in DRGR?
There is a separate address for each activity. It's all under one project. We call it a WRAP.
Right. So you have one project, and then you created under that project every single family house.
Yes, because each one had a separate contract.
That's not a requirement. The notice says you can pool your single family program. So we can talk to you, and maybe we actually are in a really big crash rush right now because we're working on a program income module with our contractors, so we don't have a lot of ability to do data corrections, but the deal is the addresses get logged in on the quarterly report for single family. For multifamily, you do need to have each project be a separate activity. But the CDBG chassis isn't like the home chassis. We didn't ask for the single-family ones to be broken out individually. Given that you already did it, and, you know, we love the extra information, that is a little problematic for program income. I think that basically you need to set up a time when I can talk to you and your field rep, whoever your field rep is. Ask them to set up a meeting or a call so I can talk to you guys about how we can fix this and make it work for you. But we specifically allowed single family to be pooled so you wouldn't have to get in this bind where you were receiving program income against every single address. If you didn't do it that way, we'll have to find another way through.
Well, and yeah, it's great to have that on each individual property because then we can see exactly how much we're losing per property.
Well, we don't.
Going out.
If you keep that in your own accounting records, we just don't need that in order to assess risk. And DRGR is about HUD getting enough information to decide whether we need to monitor you or give you a TA, and for your citizens to get enough information to sort of see the progress of the program. But each individual address is, I mean, you're revealing them. I assume your home buyers and homeowners know you're revealing them, but we don't require that for single family.
Okay.
Because we have privacy act issues too if we tried to reveal them. Okay, so get to your rep. Get them to set up something with me. Who's your rep?
Don Harris, out of the Denver office.
Okay. Go ahead and get the rep to just send me an email. I'll set up a time, okay?
Alrighty, will do. Thank you much.
Sure.
Thank you, Gail. And unfortunately, we've run out of time here. I know John has to get back to more DRGR training. So
I'll be able to answer questions like that next time.
That's right. That's right. So
we can take one or two more if people got their hands up. Ken.
If you have time, you can do one or two more.
Yeah, take two more if they're there.
Okay. Well, then let's go to Rebecca. And there you go. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. My question is, we have several homes in our target area that are vacant and abandoned, but they have not been foreclosed upon. They're owned by, actually several of them are owned by one slumlord. And we were wondering about the possibility of purchasing those and demolishing them. Can we purchase and demolish if they are vacant and abandoned, but not foreclosed upon?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as far as demolition goes, there are no requirements except that the properties are blighted. So in order to use our money for demolition, they have to meet the local definition of blight.
Okay, which they do. But we knew that we could demolish them, but we weren't sure about actually purchasing them if they're only blighted.
No, so I mean, as far as NSP is concerned, you don't have to buy them to demolish them. But if you want to buy them,
we would like to buy them because of the location that they're in.
Right. So once you demolish the buildings on them, they're going to be vacant, which means that you could purchase them under eligible use E, and you can do everything you could, everything you can do in NSP can be done under eligible use E, basically. So if you want to build new housing, or if you want to, turn into something else, but you have an interest in the site for housing, or use as housing, or?
Yes, for future development.
Yeah. Well, so we talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, again, think about, okay, so it's eligible. You can demolish it. You can acquire it. Now, what's your national objective? So you want to make sure you've got some pretty decent shot at actually getting those developed, or we won't be able to close out your grant until you do. So I'm not. We want you to succeed. We also don't want to necessarily make you be filling out NSP forms for the next 20 years. So.
No, I don't think we want to do that.
Okay.
So we would demolish them under the blight, and then we would take ownership. We couldn't take ownership first and then demolish them.
Well, Are they empty? I mean, are they unoccupied?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, in fact, a couple of them have been cited for lead,
oh, great.
so they can't be occupied.
Right. Now, well, then you can acquire vacant properties under E, and then demolish them under D, and then redevelop them again under E, and that's fine.
Okay.
You can't.
Okay.
You're in NSP 1 or 2? Or
NSP 1
okay.
and NSP 3.
All right, good. NSP 2 gets a little, you have another requirement overlaid there, but you don't have to worry about that one. Okay?
So we can acquire, then can develop them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, perfect.
Right,
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Thank you. And one final question from Patricia. Hi, Patricia.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hi. My question is basically when we submitted our pay request to the City of Newark, they told us that we couldn't charge taxes because HUD would not pay the taxes, and the city didn't want to pay the taxes. So they had us change our form. Is that accurate? I mean, taxes are part of the development cost, aren't they?
What, real estate taxes
Yes.
during the development period?
Yes.
Yes. Well, amazingly, not every person that's involved with this program, including me, knows all the answers. So why don't you have them get in touch with us? You have your rep call me, and I can tell them that that's okay, and maybe then you could submit a corrected voucher or something.
Okay.
Right?
All right. I don't know where they got that. You understand how our program is, right? We're part of a consortium with about 17 other CDCs, and we got NSP $2, and it's through the City of Newark. So we have to submit our payment to the city, and the city gets the money from HUD.
Okay, so you're talking about the City of Newark said you couldn't do it.
They said that HUD would not pay, so that's why they weren't going to allow us to charge the taxes. But I mean,
I thought you meant that the HUD Newark office was telling you that, but you're saying that your lead consortium member, which is the City of Newark, was saying that.
Yes, the City of Newark was saying that HUD is not going to pay, so they couldn't allow us to charge the dollars to the NSP2 money. But I mean, we've done it with home, we've done it, and there's never been a problem. With HOME funds, I'm not sure if you're familiar with.
Well, have somebody from the city give us a call or send in a note, and we can that during the period of construction, such costs are eligible. There's sort of skittishness about taxes, and there was concern because we don't allow cities or counties to buy tax foreclosed properties from themselves, and so I think there is, I could sort of see how you might have thought that was the policy, but in fact, we do allow it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I said it is allowed, and they're saying, no, they're telling me no. So I'm glad that you sort of confirmed what I thought should be the case. So should I have them call, is it Ken or John?
John.
Who am I having them call?
Have them call John Laswick at headquarters.
Or email me. Do you have my email address up there?
The email on the screen here.
Right, it's on the screen right now.
John A. Laswick at HUD.gov.
I get 25% of any refunds here too. So.
Thank you, Patricia. And John, thanks for staying late. And thanks to Jesse for chiming in with some of those helpful answers too. So we look forward to seeing you all again real soon on another HUD NSP webinar.